We have 1 minute. I'll give it 1 exact minute.
Give it a minute.
Sounds good. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. We'll lower this down. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Welcome to the Caldwell-West Caldwell Board of Education regular monthly meeting, today Monday, February 24th, 2025. Tonight, the board met in executive session at 6 o'clock p.m. here at James Caldwell High School, 265 Westville Avenue in West Caldwell. The purpose of that meeting was to discuss personnel litigation, miscellaneous, and old business matters. That meeting has been advertised and is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act and NJSA 10:4-6, also known as the Sunshine Law. The matters discussed will be made public when confidentiality is no longer required, and formal action pursuant to said discussion shall take place only at a meeting to which the public has been invited. Tonight, the public conference meeting is happening today at 7 o'clock p.m. We are prompt this evening here in the James Caldwell High School cafeteria. The Board of Education meeting will be streamed live, but all community questions and comments will be welcomed here in person only. The Caldwell-West Caldwell Board of Education public conference meeting is also in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and NJSA 10:4-6, also known as the Sunshine Law. Notices have been sent to The Progress in Caldwell, New Jersey, the Star Ledger, Newark, New Jersey, and Tap Into West Essex. Notices have also been posted at the Board of Education Business Office in the Harrison School Building, Gray Street, West Caldwell, and have been delivered to the clerks of the Borough of Caldwell and Township of West Caldwell for posting. Brian, can you take the roll?
Yes. Student Representative Cole Baserman.
Here.
Ms. DiMartini.
Here.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson. Ms. Mack.
Here.
Mr. Diambola.
Here.
Ms. Grosso.
Here.
So we have 4 voting members present. We have a quorum.
Great. Can everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Cole, want to lead us into it?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brian, are there any communications for the board this evening?
There were none.
Okay, great. Before I hand it over and get into the superintendent's report, I'd like to take a moment, since we have a full crowd, to announce on behalf of the James Caldwell High School Theater Department that James Caldwell High School will be presenting the annual spring musical theater production of Lucky Stiff, which I believe is a takeoff of Weekend at Bernie's for all of us in the 80s, that we could kind of relate to that. The shows are March 7th and 8th at 7:30 p.m. and March 8th and 9th at 2 o'clock p.m. in the CPA here at the high school. So the premise of the show is Harry Witherspoon, an unassuming English shoe salesman, stands to inherit $6 million from an American uncle he didn't even know he had. However, in order to claim the cash, Harry must take his uncle on one last whirlwind vacation to Monte Carlo. The catch is his uncle has already died. So Harry must escort the embalmed body through a belated bucket list of activities. If he fails, the money will go to the Universal Dog Home of Brooklyn through his uncle's gun-toting ex-girlfriend. Sounds actually very adorable. I've never heard of the show before the high school was doing it this year, but it sounds like a lot of fun. Admissions is $15, and tickets are available to purchase online if they visit the website in advance, and then I believe at the door as well. So super excited. That's next weekend. Please come out and support our amazing theater kids. They are so amazing, and they work so hard. That being said, also want to mention that this Friday, on behalf of the James Caldwell High School Scholarship Committee, is Scholarship Rocks at the Ringside Pub, 7:30 p.m. All proceeds for that will go directly towards scholarships for our 2025 graduating senior class. Donations at the door, so there's no set entrance fees. So come, have a drink, enjoy, and support the class of 2025. And now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Conklin for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board President. I'd like to invite Liam Roth from the House of Citizenship and Jason Nicolaj from the House of Courage. Jason, did I get that right? Yeah. Thank you. I worked on that for a couple of minutes, to be honest with you.
Hi, thank you to Dr. Conklin and the Board of Education for inviting us to speak tonight. I'm Jason Nicolaj, and I'm representing the House of Courage.
I'm Liam Roth, and I'm representing the House of Citizenship.
On January 23rd, the 8th graders took a trip for a tour and information session at Essex County College. We took a career interest survey and heard about the many different programs Essex County College has to offer. We also found out that James Caldwell High School has a partnership with Essex County College for the JCHS students to be able to take college-level courses and receive college credits while still in high school.
The Super Bowl the Super Bowl food collection was a food drive that we did at our school to help stock the Caldwell food pantry. Students would bring in either soup, cereal, or pasta to their Period 1 teacher. Miss Calabro's Period 1 Executive Functioning class was the lucky winner that was awarded a bagel breakfast. On Valentine's Day, the school held their yearly academic bowl. Whichever house answered the most correct questions won a lot of house points. On the same day, GCMS hosted something that we've never done before. There was a volleyball tournament called Volley Royale. This game resulted in the best 8th grade team playing against the teachers. Unfortunately, in a series of 3, the teachers won 2-1. The House of Leadership won the academic bowl, but the teachers team dominated in that competition as well. The Friday before Valentine's Day, GCMS held a dance at night. Many people went, and there were many activities for them to do. There was an open gym where people hung out and could play basketball, but there was also a DJ in the cafeteria where lots of people were dancing and having fun.
GCMS participated in a school-wide readathon hosted by the GCMS HSA. The House of Knowledge won the contest with the most minutes read. The GCMS orchestra went on a trip to see the Philharmonic at Lincoln Center. They got to see the orchestra play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and experiment with music. They learned about a new kind of instrument and composer. Missy Mazzoli came to visit and showed us her new song that she was creating. It was based on the solar system and her interpretation of the sound of space. All of the students had a great time and loved listening to the music that Philharmonic played. My favorite part of being a house leader this year is being able to interact with all the students of each grade level, as well as connecting with all the other house leaders I work with. I love that kids think that the house leaders are approachable and can feel safe around us. I also love participating in various house games because I think it gives the kids the feeling of peace. As a house leader, I and the other leaders do stuff in front of the school that makes the other students feel awkward and embarrassed if they were to do it. Overall, it makes a safer and much more comfortable environment for the students.
Frozen Junior auditions are complete. Production preparations underway. Stay tuned for more information coming soon. My favorite part about being a house leader so far this year is spending more time having fun and doing special things throughout the year. We get to do many fun things such as the lip sync battle and play special house games in front of the whole school. Another thing that I really enjoy doing is spending lunch with all the house leaders in the ISTEM room, thinking of ideas for the next house day. Everybody in there is having a good time and making jokes, which just lightens up the mood. Thank you again, Dr. Conklin, and members of the Board of Education for your time. Do you have any questions?
No.
Can we take a 1-minute break to take a picture?
Yeah, can we just take a quick picture and then you guys can go home? You don't have to stay here. This is going to be a longer meeting.
Now I'd like to invite Greg Somgen up to start the presentation about the referendum.
Good evening. My name is Greg Somgen. I am the district's architect, and I've been asked to come this evening to present on the referendum that is coming up to vote in March We've made several presentations over the course of the last several months, and the district has been distributing information so that the community has what they need to be able to vote in the manner that they so choose. And I think part of what we are here to talk about tonight is just a quick recap of a lot of the pieces of this referendum, and specifically to address perhaps some misinformation that is floating around in the community so that people are basing their decisions on accurate information. So the first question that we've been talking about is, why is the district pursuing a referendum now? And the answer is very simply that there is debt from decades ago that is rolling off, and the opportunity to take on newly much needed construction projects without any additional tax impact to the community was something that the board felt was very, very important and fiscally responsible. On top of that, by going to referendum, the district is benefiting from state aid that is available, and in particular for the infrastructure projects that we're talking about, like the elementary school vestibules and the high school wood shop steam lab. Those have all been eligible for 34 cents on the dollar. So the state is subsidizing that, allowing the district's debt that is rolling off to be stretched even further. So there are two questions that we are going to be talking about that have been communicated, and the first one has no additional tax impact to the community, and what you'll hear me and others reiterate is that these are needed projects. They are boiler pipes that are outlived their useful life. There are classroom renovations. So again, the beauty of the proposal is that it doesn't cost the community members anything more than they're paying in taxes today. Debt service aid is available. So that's really why the districts are doing it now. If the March referendum comes and goes and is unsuccessful, the ability to recover that debt rolling off goes away. And so anything that has to be undertaken in the future will be 100% borne by the local community. So I'm going to go through this quickly, but I'm happy to revisit it at the end because I'm led to believe that while there may be some questions, I think it's the athletic center that has more of a focus on questions that need to be answered. Within the high school, there is going to be a new security vestibule incorporated to match up with what exists in other facilities. The woodshop computer lab is going to be completely gut and renovated to modernize it into a STEAM space to prep kids going into the workforce or to college. And the gymnasium and the auxiliary gym are going to get heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrades within the building. At Grover Cleveland Middle School, there's going to be a security vestibule upgrade. There are some stair and facade repairs, including the fire escape, that very badly need attention. There's some piping replacement that is failing. And here again, the gymnasium is going to get heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrades. One of the things that have been talked about in the community is this Grover Cleveland Middle School field improvement project. And I've been asked to provide clarification that the project that is being discussed for the field has nothing to do with the referendum. The project being discussed is in the very early stages of a shared services discussion between the Township of West Caldwell and the Board of Education. Again, it's in the early stages, but there have been some out there who thought that this was part of the referendum, and it is not. I don't know any other way to make it more clear, so that this is a separate project being considered and is in the very early planning stages between the Township of West Caldwell and the Board of Ed. Moving on to other infrastructure projects, at the Jefferson Elementary School, there will be similar projects that are happening at the other elementary schools. So a vestibule upgrade and taking one of the existing classroom spaces and upgrading it to allow it to be used for STEAM, which is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And ultimately, things like 3D printers and some fun colors will be incorporated into each of the elementary schools. Again, at Lincoln, similarly, one of the spaces will get improvements to include STEAM. In Lincoln, there's also going to be a vestibule. We're moving a main office and classroom alteration to make access through a vestibule more readily available. There are some flooring replacements that are needed, as well as facade repairs. And like one of the other schools, there is badly needed piping replacement that will need to be replaced, whether it's part of the referendum at a subsidy or borne completely by the district. Those are things that must get done to keep the schools operational. At Washington, a vestibule upgrade and a STEAM lab. At Wilson, vestibule upgrade and a STEAM lab. And that's it for the infrastructure projects. I will reiterate that the infrastructure projects have no additional tax impact to the community. It's the ability that the board has identified, which is debt rolling off and debt service aid from the state, that is allowing that to happen. And these are needed projects. So while the board certainly hopes that the voters are going to support it, if they don't, these projects still have to be done some way. Moving on to the athletic center. So when we started the planning for the athletic center, there were some very basic goals that were identified. Locker room allocation was one of them. Currently, only the men use it. The proposal has men and women using it equally. The public restrooms are old and small, and there was one community member who shared with us in public that she rather had gone home to use the facilities than to try to use the single fixture bathroom that exists on either side for the public. We are going to be incorporating a brand new multi-fixture facility for both the men's and women's side. Barrier-free compliant. Barrier-free compliant is the New Jersey code that aligns itself with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Today, the current facility is not compliant. Our new one will be. Obviously, there's a modernizing of component by building a new facility. Every material that is used in construction has a useful life. And in the case of the existing building, and the stories that I've heard from many who have lived in this community for decades, who were there while they were going to school, I think the building has served the community well, but it has certainly outlived its useful life. And then additional flexible space, which we'll talk about as well. The current space building does not have such a thing, and the proposed building does. So this is an aerial of the existing building located at approximately 3 o'clock on the screen. You should recognize from this view the track, which is the most notable, the practice fields down towards the bottom. The new proposal has a different footprint. It's bigger. It also has some additional parking, and the green area that is on the screen reflects the stormwater management that is required as part of the project and the Department of Environmental Protection's criteria. We're also relocating the shot put area. The practice field remains as is, and some of the sidewalks and improved circulation around the building will be addressed as part of this project, so both the home and visitor sides can easily access the new public restrooms. The plans are relatively straightforward. The plan on the left is the first floor. The blue area highlights the locker rooms. So there are 2 locker rooms for men, a larger and a smaller, plus a restroom facility for the athletes, so they don't have to leave their respective locker rooms to use the facilities. And there are some coaches' offices. And then replicating at exactly on the bottom of the screen in blue are the women's side. The yellow in the area of the middle of the plan is reflective of the new modern restrooms that are going to be barrier-free compliant, allow for multiple fixtures to reduce lines, and so that the community has a safe place to use. There's also a family restroom there as a single fixture restroom for families or others to use. The green in the left side of the plan is an extension of the trainers area that exists in the high school. The one here at the high school will remain, but there was also a sense that having a trainers area adjacent to the fields that are used for practice and games would allow the athletes to be able to be taken care of. And then the white spaces are basically circulation, including elevator, stairwells, vestibules, and the like. On the right side is the second floor plan. The second floor plan has the large green area, which is a multi-purpose room. It's intended to be used by all the athletes for different purposes, to be used for professional development, to potentially be used for testing, to be used by the community. The purple area is some meeting areas that allow for various conferences to potentially take place. And then the yellow is additional storage that has been incorporated into the building. Storage was one of the bigger items that were identified as part of the planning exercise. There are always in-season and out-of-season things that need to be stored, and in the case of professional development or using that space upstairs for other purposes, the facilities group will be able to store tables and chairs in the larger yellow storage area located at 6 o'clock on the plan. This is a rendering that we created just to give some idea of what the aesthetics of the building might be. We tried to be conscious about the residential neighborhood that exists across the street and also on the other side of the tree line. The tree line does a nice job of shielding the building, and this is a view from the track and field area. We wanted to also provide some clarification. The progress paper, it's a little hard to read in the yellow highlight, referenced an 8,000 square foot athletic center, which would skew anyone's perception of the cost and other things. This facility is in fact 16,173 square feet over 2 floors, not 8,000. So again, we just want to make sure that the correct information is being shared. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite our athletic director up here to just talk a little about some other questions that have come up during the communications campaign.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Greg. It's my pleasure being here tonight, and I come here tonight wearing 2 hats. My first hat is that I am the director of athletics here, but my second is that I've lived my entire 67 years of my life in West Caldwell, so I'm a resident as well, and I understand how everyone's concerned over budgets and tax impacts and all of that. What I'd like to do tonight is answer some questions that, and Greg kind of touched on some misconceptions that might be out there, but I'd like to answer some questions that, and let me say them first. Let me get them out there first, and then if you certainly want to ask me later on, you can certainly do that. But let's go through a few things. The slide that's up there right now has to do with our sports offerings here at the high school. We're very unique in that about 65% of our students are involved in athletics, and people will say that can't be, it's impossible. But that is the truth. So when we improve our athletic facilities, we're improving for our students. There's also a unique statistic that says that if you track a 4-year career of our students, from 9th grade through 12th, about 80% of our students will be involved in athletics. So again, that's something that I'm very proud of, and we all should be very proud of. A question might come up, why is this necessary? Why is this field house necessary? Is it just for football? It's a football field house. Well, it was built 80 years ago, and 80 years ago when Chief Bonnell was here as the baseball and the football coach, he had that field house built, and it was just baseball and it was just football. That's what it was. And it's been that ever since. A few years ago, we added lacrosse there. It needs to be expanded so that our other sports can use it as well. Think about our sports that are not in the field house, that have to get changed down here at the high school. They've got to lug their equipment up to the field. If it rains, they're going to get rained on. They've got to cover their equipment up. They have no access to the field house. The poor females have zero access, and the bathroom is even worse. So I think that, is it just for football? Absolutely not. This field house will be for all of our outdoor sports. All of our outdoor sports. In the fall, football will use it. Boys and girls soccer will use it. Field hockey will use it. In the spring, baseball will use the field house. Boys and girls lacrosse will use the field house or the athletic center. Softball and track. So this will be used by multiple sports, and I'm going to say every one of our outdoor sports will use it. The next thing It's an 80-year-old building. It has, as Greg said, it's seen its life. You know, it's had its use. And if you had the chance to go through this building, as Coach Kelly said, you might not want to go in there again because it's in bad shape. It's in disrepair. So this building needs something, and it has gone through its necessary life. We need the storage. The public bathrooms, as I said, are outdated and too small. So all of that tells you why you need this field house. People will say, well, all right, let's build a field house, a one-story field house. Why do we need the second story? And one of the things that has not been brought up is really what we use our second story for now. Our second story is used for our teams to see themselves on film review. Film review is an extremely, in fact, we'll say it as coaches, it's the best teaching tool that we can show our kids. Take film of them, let them watch themselves play, and then that's how you critique them and make them better. Not only that, but we will also be able to scout other teams and watch those teams there. So that room right now is used for film review. That will be used in the future for film review in the fall as well as in the spring. Obviously in the winter, we're not in there in the winter. However, in the winter, our wrestling team will go up there and they will use it for practice. Now, what does that do? Well, that frees up our auxiliary gym. In our auxiliary gym, which is where the wrestling team practices now, our cheerleaders can now have a space to practice. I mean, our poor cheerleaders practice in the vestibule by the auditorium. That's their practice space. So they now will have an area to practice in. Freshman basketball practices up at the middle school. That might give them a space as well to practice in. So by wrestling moving doesn't make it a wrestling field house or a wrestling second floor. It frees up space for other sports, for sure. Storage is a major, major issue that we have. We're expanding. We have very little space down here. This will give us an area for us to store all of our athletic equipment. So really, the three major reasons: access to locker rooms for all of our sports, the use of that second story for many different things, and I haven't even touched on, which everyone else has, how the school and how the community will use that second story space. But this will be something that is used for all, and it's extremely necessary. And then, of course, let's address the bathroom issue. So that's all a part of why we should be looking at this. There's the layout right there. We've got enough space there on the right side, certainly for all of our female sports. There's a 60 locker room space and a 30 locker room space. All of our female sports that are outdoors can certainly use that. On the left side, we've got, and the question's going to come up, or probably even has come up, well, where is soccer going to go? Because that seems to be a football locker room. That smaller space in the front, I would envision our soccer team using. I would see our soccer team in that space. I would see our football team in the larger space. If for some reason we have too many kids to utilize the football space, we're going to use the upstairs space to hang equipment, if that's what has to happen. All right? But there are none of our teams that will be left out, none of our outdoor teams that will be left out of this field house. all right, in my view. All right, a question also came up. Well, who was involved in this planning? All right, well, we started on this months and months ago. And we sat down with football coach, soccer coaches, girls and boys, field hockey. Our cheering coach got involved, our wrestling coach got involved, all our coaches got involved along with board members. The first architect that was here, this is before Greg was involved, Dr. Conklin, Brian was involved in this. So there was a lot of input into this space. And it went through several drawings until this was finalized. And it was determined that this is probably the best way to go with it. So lots of people were involved in this planning. And I know that that was one of the questions as well. The locker room space will be used in several different ways. For example, football would need the locker rooms for equipment, to hang equipment. So they're going to use the space as a locker room. Whereas, let's say soccer will use the space as a changing room. They're going to go in there, they're going to change into their practice clothes or into their uniforms. They're going to practice or play a game, go back in, they're going to change, and they're going to go home. So they're going to use it as a changing facility. Okay? Some will use the space for storage, just to store all their equipment and to gather their equipment before a practice. And then, of course, the one thing that hasn't been mentioned really is the trainer's space, which is extremely important. Our trainer will have an area there to treat our athletes that get hurt. He doesn't have to bring them down to his office down here to treat them. So that makes that much better. So there's a reason for every one of the spaces that has been drawn there. And of course, as I've said already, the bathrooms are gigantic. Gigantic. I believe that's it, Greg. Is there anything more you need me to do? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
So just to put things in perspective, the bathrooms are properly sized. So I think from what I've heard over the past couple of months at back to school nights, indirectly through the board, is that my house and private projects don't cost this much. How could this? And I think one of the primary differences is that you can't compare a residential or a private project to a project in New Jersey that requires public prevailing wage, also known as union rates. And so we're going to share a little bit of a breakdown in order to try to help to have people understand. I share the concern of construction costs in general, because if you've gone to Home Depot to buy anything, the cost has gone up, whether it's a personal project or a project that you're doing through your office or something else. So we can all be equally outraged by how much things cost these days. However, you need to understand that those are the facts with which we are dealing, and so don't shoot the messengers. So how can this cost $15 million? The print's a little bit small, and my eyes are not as good as they used to be, but we tried to break it down reasonably to explain it, while at the same time not sharing more information, because part of the public bidding process is competitive bidding, and so we don't typically share budgets before a project is bid. But just to put things in perspective, the building is approximately 3,000 square feet that exists today. To abate it, because there are some environmental issues, and to demo it, it's going to be about $150,000. Many have asked the question, why don't we renovate and keep it? And the realities are that the building's footprint is not conducive, it's too small, many of the materials have outlived their useful life, and the realities are that if you try to salvage bits and pieces, you're going to spend more time and potentially more money than just, in this particular case, starting from scratch. The big number, obviously, is something we refer to as hard costs. Hard costs are the actual cost of construction. At a building of 16,173 square feet, if you use a budget number of $625 per square foot, which is a big number, I'm not going to disagree with you, you come up with just over $10 million of hard costs. Now, the realities are, and I put some examples up there, that in 2003, a little over 20 years ago, we were constructing buildings like this for $250 per square foot. And over the course of 20 years, this is what has happened. In 2024, we opened bids for an elementary school addition. The bids ranged from $600 to $700 a square foot, with the average being $667. These are real bids, real projects. For a school, public school, 100%. The next one is 2024, was another classroom addition. The average was $550 to $980. Wow, my eyes are really bad.
9:30. 9:30.
$930. I'm going to stand up here. In 2023, we had an elementary school addition, $597, high of $829, with the average bids of $684. And then in 2020, which was a few years earlier, we opened bids for another athletic center, 20,000 square feet. The range was from $468 to $551, with an average of $500 a square foot. My point is that these numbers are not made up. They are grounded in real-life public bidding projects. These are a handful of examples, and you can see there are clearly some contractors that are outliers who bid a project at $900 a square foot, but you can see based on the lows and the averages that budgeting $625 for a building like this, which has more plumbing than a typical classroom addition would, right? You have multi-fixture bathrooms, you have drains, you have mechanical systems that are going to be a little more unique than you might have for a classroom addition, because you have locker rooms that have certain smells associated with them that need to be addressed. So the point of this particular piece of information is, to the degree I can put your mind at ease, that we can all agree that the cost of construction is outrageous, but that these numbers are real, and we want to be able to plan so that once we bid the project, we can award it. I do just want to point out that that's why you can't really compare residential construction to a publicly bid project. There are pre-qualification requirements of contractors. Material costs have gone up. We don't know what the tariffs are going to do that are being discussed now for materials coming out of the country. And obviously you have the prevailing wage rates that all contractors, whether you're a union contractor or not, you must pay prevailing wage rates, and the Department of Labor follows up to make sure that that is happening. Another line item in the budget is site and utility improvements. That's about $1.2 million. That alone is about $42 a square foot. That, as you probably know, the existing building has sewer, water, gas, electric, communications. Those all need to be disconnected. They need to be rerouted. They need to be set up for temporary use, and then they need to be reconnected to have the building operate. Again, there's a required retention basin that the Department of Environmental Protection requires to manage stormwater. We have new sidewalks, and we have new parking areas. The next category is contingencies. While this adds to the budget, yes, sir.
So if the last lowest one was 615 to 773, is that right?
Yep.
737? All right, so you went with 625, which if I look at the percentage increases year over year, that seems a lot lower. Curious how you go with that number.
Oh, I'm sorry, a lot lower in what sense?
In percentage increase year over year.
I'm glad you asked. Who put you in the audience? Contingencies. So we are carrying other contingencies because we know that costs go up year over year. So we're carrying something we call market escalation, totaling just over $600,000. It's a contingency because when we created this budget months and months ago, because it's needed for the Department of Education submission. Once the project is approved, which it has been, we take it to the voters. You are going to get a chance to go to the polls on March 11th and vote. Once the vote comes in, let's knock on wood, the board hopes it's going to be successful. We all hope it's going to be successful. Maybe some of you don't think it's going to be successful. Putting that aside, we still have months of work to do to create detailed drawings. We have to add mechanical, electrical, plumbing, because all we've created so far was a preliminary set of drawings to get the Department of Ed's approval. The Department of Ed doesn't want the district spending significant monies on professional fees if the project is not going to be viable. But they need enough to be able to approve the project based on their standards. So we're going to take months and months, which means we won't be out to bid until the fall, maybe the spring. We have to talk about tactically. How are we going to get the athletes temporarily out of the building to do all these things to provide minimal disruption? So the market escalation is really covering a couple of things. It's covering a budget that will be 2 years old by the time we bid the project and the unknowns of what we're dealing with in the marketplace. The next line is design and construction contingencies. These are contingencies that the Department of Education requires us to carry because, number one, there are many decisions that have yet to be made. I trust you can all appreciate if you've ever bought a tile for your house or a carpet for your house, the cost between a low price material and a high price material vary greatly. So we're going to have to make conscious decisions to manage the budget on material selection. And as with any construction, it's not a perfect process. We're going to encounter unforeseen conditions. And so this carries it. Now, the beauty that I've bolded at the bottom is that while we are carrying these as a requirement of the DOE and as a best practice, if we don't need them, they get returned to the community. But if we don't ask for them, once the vote is approved, we can't spend more than the voters approved. And so to have such contingencies in any construction project is a needed element to the project. And then the last piece of this $15 million total are what we call soft costs. There are a host of professionals involved, including the architects, the engineers, the surveyors, the bond counsel who helps with the financing, financial advisors, a construction manager, environmental and testing consultants. The professional team is involved for years, and this line item covers that involvement. And then lastly, there are review fees, which include about $250,000. The Department of Education has a review fee. The permit fee, the Uniform Construction Code, which is the local building department, may often have a review fee. We have soil conservation. So there are a host of fees that are going to be incurred as part of this project, and those two are carried here. If as a courtesy, the local town waives their fees, that's less money that we need to spend that can be used and go back to the public. So that's how we get to $15.4 million for an athletic center. Yes, sir.
There's no furniture, fixture, or equipment.
There's no furniture or fixture. Let me rephrase that. What you're referring to are loose furniture and fixture. Lockers are built in. Those are part of our budget. You know, those kinds of things. But they're not really tables and chairs like you would have in a classroom. And so the board, when they talk about the portable tables and chairs, may reuse some of these, may buy some new ones out of the project. That's not needed. Those are all existing and be reused. I'd like to invite our business administrator up here just to talk a little about the financial impact. Then we have some additional frequently asked questions we'll answer, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I don't mean to be rude, but Teresa, we're gonna do questions at the end. Everyone will have a chance. We're gonna go around and give you exhausted until all the questions are done. We just wanna get through the presentation, okay?
Okay, hi, I'm Brian McCarthy. Again, I'm the business administrator and the board secretary, and just a couple quick slides I want to go through. All right, question one, okay. All right, so let me get right to this one here. We'll go back. All right, can you see this slide? It's kind of small, and I'll go backwards. So these are the numbers for the projects. If you look at this slide here, the left side has question number 1. The right side has question number 2. If you can look at question number 1 on the top left side there, the district is going to borrow a total of $22,875,000 for question 1. And again, to repeat some of the things that Greg said, this borrowing is for health and safety issues for our school, capital projects, security, steam, piping. So $22,875,000. We can't borrow more than that for these projects. We're going to contribute $3 million and change out of our capital reserve to the projects here, And then our debt service here is going to replicate the bond that is maturing. So that's why we say there's no additional impact. The state of New Jersey, because these are projects tied to instruction, and they realize that we can't fund these things through our normal operating budget, they subsidize some of the costs, and that's what the debt service portion is. So of the $22,875,000, roughly $15 million of that is what we're going to be responsible for as a district, and then the other $7 million and change, the state's going to contribute over a 20-year period to help make the payments. All right. Question number 2, and again, let me go back to question number 1. Very important to have these done, and I was telling our board president, we have 100-year-old buildings, piping, facade issues, in addition to some of the infrastructure projects. If we don't continue to maintain our buildings, I had a conversation with my son this week. He lives in Hoboken. They're boiling their water. They turned it off. Hoboken, I love it. They're building above ground. They're not doing a great job maintaining the infrastructure. In Hoboken, they can say, okay, the water will come on in a couple days, boil it, and hopefully it gets better. Here, we'd have to close the schools. All right, we don't have a choice. We'd have to go to other schools here, and then we'd have to figure out how to get it done. So they're important projects. I just want to put that out there. That's sort of a real-life analogy. Question number 2. This is what we talked about. This is the amount we're going to borrow for the field house. So the field house is $15,418,000. We're going to borrow $13,418,000 over 20 years. We're going to contribute $2 million. So it's, again, the cost is $15.4 million. We contribute $2 million. So we're going to borrow $13,418,000 over 20 years. And then you have the split column here. What is it going to cost the average taxpayer? It's going to be $128 and change annually, increased taxes for a resident of Caldwell, and $127 and change for a resident of West Caldwell. Now, the average assessment for Caldwell is $426,000. For West Caldwell, it's $448,000. These are average numbers. As I said, no one likes to be average. Some of us think we're above average, but in reality, some are below average and some are above average. So just to take those numbers, for $100,000 assessed value, for West Caldwell, it's $30 annual per year. So if you're a 400 assessment, it's going to be 4 times 30. If you're a 600 assessment, it'll be 6 times 30, and you can figure it out quickly. For West Caldwell, something very similar. We're $28.50 or 40 cents per 100,000, and you can do the same type of math to figure out what's your assessment. Realize that assessments, if you look at the postcard you get from the town, your assessed value is usually much lower than your market value. So if you say your house is worth $900,000, that may not be your assessment. If you had a recent renovation, the town may reassess you, but typically, if you look at your land plus improvements, it's usually much less than market value. Any questions on this?
We'll do questions at the end.
Okay, all right, good. So I think that's all I wanted to share with you as far as the tax impact. This chart really is the best, I think, example, if you can see it, of what should happen. And again, we can't borrow any more than these amounts. Okay, thank you.
So just for everyone's benefit, this is in the flyer that's been handed out, and I believe copies are in the back of the room as well. So it does break down the tax impact to numbers that are a little more manageable and understandable. Again, we inserted these just for the benefit of trying to be clear on the values. I believe they are in the flyers that are in the back if you'd like to grab a copy of those. So I will wrap up with addressing a few more frequently asked questions, and then we'll open up the floor. If there's no greater tax impact on question 1, why am I having to vote? And the reason you have to vote, even though there's no additional tax impact, is because the communities must vote to approve the board borrowing money. This is true even if there's no tax impact, but because the board's borrowing money for 20 years for these improvements, they need the community's approval. And the Department of Education says they want the community's approval in order to give the district debt service aid. That's the only way this money is available, if you borrow money, if you have debt. They're not going to give you money like they did several years ago in the form of a grant. When will I be asked to vote? The vote is happening on March 11th, 2025, which is only a week or two away. It's a Tuesday. I presume you will be voting in the same locations that you would normally vote for a general election, but we can answer that question when yes? Thank you. How many questions are there? There are going to be 2 questions on the ballot. One is the infrastructure projects that we reviewed that have, again, are much needed and have no additional tax impact. And then question 2, which is an independent question. It has to do only with the athletics center. How is it that question 1 does not impact taxes? I think we talked about this, but I think it's important enough to reiterate. The combination of debt that's rolling off. So just imagine that you're about to make your last payment on your mortgage of your house. You want to go refinance it, and you want to go do something else with that money, pay for college tuition, go on a really great vacation, whatever you'd want to do with it. You would be continuing to pay that same mortgage amount that you did pay, in this case, the debt service aid. Will also help reduce the amount that you are borrowing, stretching the dollar further, and those are the reasons that question 1 has no tax impact. This was touched on a little while ago, but it was asked. In the athletic center, right now the design has placeholders for 60 lockers in the primary locker room and 30 in the secondary for both the men's and the women's side. The lockers will be designed post-referendum. We didn't get into detail. The lowest common denominator in locker size is football because of the unique circumstance of helmets, pads, etc. So it's very likely, based on my experience, that the locker room will be used for football will have bigger lockers, which will be holding us to 60. But in the other locker rooms, depending on the decisions made by the coaches, by the administration, by the athletic director, right now, if you don't need a full-height locker, you could easily take 60 lockers on the women's side, put them in half, and create 120 lockers. So, for a soccer player with a gym bag and a backpack, that might be more than sufficient. Softball, again, has equipment, but nothing rises to the level of football's equipment size that has a particular spatial requirement. Okay. That concludes our presentation. This young lady had a question, so why don't we start with her?
I'm going to bring the microphone around so that way they can hear you at home. So if you have a question, they go that way.
Teresa Cardi. So I have a question. I know that we spoke over at Lincoln, and I'm just confused on why we can't go with private developers.
Because it's a public project and the law prevents it.
The law prevents it, so it can't be gifted. I mean, I have
If you
gift
gift,
for $300 a square foot on the high end.
yeah, if you gift it, you still have to pay prevailing wage because it's on a public property,
So there's no way around using union.
not legal ways.
Definitely needs to be done though. That's it has something has to be done. My son would come home throwing up from there. It's disgusting. I mean, he was sick, throwing up, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. It's disgusting.
I think she's talking about the existing building.
The existing field.
The existing building is disgusting. My son would leave for movie, and he would throw up outside. It's horrible.
Hi.
Guy Rivera.
Can you just, I'm so sorry, can we just follow the rules of the public
Yeah,
meeting?
this is
Announcement
for
of your,
meeting.
thank you, thank you.
No problem. Question for you. Earlier you had said if either of these fail, for instance, all of the cost gets borne by the taxpayer, correct? But why couldn't we just go back to market for a new bond? So if the referendum fails for either one of these, why couldn't we just look
So-
for financing?
So the second question, you can absolutely go back out, but the first question has debt service aid available. Because yours expires in March, if you don't benefit from an approved referendum for question 1, then then the debt that is rolling off goes away. Because once the last payment is made, it's done. So this is happening prior to the last payment being made so that you can roll the payments and continue them. Once the last payment is made, you'll still get the 34%, but you won't get the benefit of the debt that's rolling off. So question 1 will cost you a little more than it would if you pass it on March 11th. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I guess question 1, I'm a little bit more convinced on knowing. So I grew up going through the school district. I went to Jefferson. I went to Cleveland. In 1 year, I worked for Mr. Romano when I was a lifeguard. I went to school with some of the coaches that would probably benefit from this. I'm a little more skeptical and leery of the second question, if I'm being honest, because you present this to us and you say, hey, this is the cost. I imagine that these facilities and locker rooms could be used for this. In my head, I think it's going to look like that. It feels like there's a lot of uncertainty for something we're going to be voting on in less than a month. So, like, you come to me and say, hey, you're going to pay it a higher tax burden every year. It's going to have this bottom line, but it feels underbaked to some extent because there's no formal, like, hey, these are all the things, all the boxes we're going to tick. Like, it feels more abstract. Like, it could do this. It might do that. We kind of have a need to do this and satisfy that. I guess I just would have hoped it would have been a much more fully baked, to keep using cooking references, a fully baked.
Can you give me an example of what you mean that it's underbaked?
Well, like I said, sorry, Mr. Romano, not to call you up directly, but like you said, he was like, I imagine possibly soccer players could use this section of the locker room while football players use that section. I imagine we maybe could have the cheerleaders use the upper floor because we moved.
So
Actually saw the auxiliary gym, which we're spending money to improve.
So I'll address that as an outsider, and then I can have Dan come up and address it. I think my responsibility is to create a plan that gives as much flexibility to the users as possible, and that's what is here. I think from a constructability perspective, we are confident in what was designed, what was approved, and the dollars that we have allocated to it. The uses could change from year to year based on participation in sports, based on a host of other things. So to lock in right now and say, with 100% certainty, this is what the multipurpose room is going to be used for, I don't think would be fair because it's going to change. I think what is clear is that there are 2 locker rooms for the men's sports, 2 locker rooms for the women's sports, which I've heard consistently was needed for decades. One woman, I don't think I'm speaking out of school, she said it publicly, her daughter had a medical condition, maybe diabetes. This poor young girl has no place to go to keep her medicines dry and other stuff. So I think from that planning perspective, I would offer to you, and we're having a nice dialogue, so don't take this the wrong way, I don't think it's underbaked at all. I think it's well thought out, I think it's a good plan, and I think it's expensive, but if it doesn't pass this time, one thing I can almost assure you is it ain't gonna get less expensive. So you will do more or less with potentially the same amount of money. Now, as it relates to usage, I don't know if you want to address that, but I think there are still things that have to be worked out because, again, schedules have to be looked at. The auxiliary gym becomes available. So there's a lot going on there that is arguably not completely thought out yet because it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, just to build on that, if I knew that I was the person that was going to make that decision, the decision would be the soccer team has the front locker room, the cheerleaders have the auxiliary gym, the wrestling team wrestles on the space on the second floor. That would be my decision right now. I don't know that that's going to be my decision. Whether the board makes that or I'm not sure who it is. But that's what it is. So I don't know that it's half-baked. I think it's pretty solid. Underbaked, whatever.
Not something I want to eat and be afraid of not getting sick, And by all means, Greg, I hope you don't feel like this.
I do not. I think you've been very cordial.
I just want to make sure, because I don't think some of these decisions lie with you. I appreciate the work you put in. I'm sure you busted your butt to come up with these. So, and to your point, and a little bit to my point, things would get more more expensive if we continue on with this exact same plan, right?
Correct.
If you use a different plan, if this goes back to the drawing board, it may be more expensive or it might not be. We don't actually know until we get a new.
Yeah, so look, my response to that would be that if you go back to the drawing board, we have to resubmit to the DOE. That's minimally 6 months. The next possible election is September. After that, you don't have your elections in November. You have April? November. So the next possible earliest election will be September, but we're going to miss that deadline because they need the submission in March. So the earliest, assuming we work with lightning speed, would be a November election. If we can't hit that one, it will be December. So arguably, everything gets pushed out a year. Could you come back with a smaller version of the field house and go one story? Conceptually, yes. Will the cost of square foot have gone up based on what we've seen? Maybe. Maybe things flatten out. I don't know. Maybe we get our Italian friend here to, call Uncle Vito and oh, did you? There you go. Okay, so there you go. It's well-rounded. Anyway, my point is simply that the costs will be more expensive potentially, and you'll get less for your money. Is it a possibility? Sure, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I guess I don't respond to that, but just saying, I think there are more immediate things that are answering question one, like if the boiler went out in the middle school, like there are things that it's a ticking time bomb where it's like, if you tell me we need a couple extra months because we need to go back to the DOE, we need to go back to get all these approvals, that field house has been 3 times as long as I've been on this earth, so I'm not too worried that, maybe a hurricane comes through and has a little bit. I'm not
Look,
too
and I think the board needs to be commended because they specifically looked at structuring the questions, knowing that there is quote unquote free money. Nothing is free, but there is debt rolling off. There is state aid, which we got for all the question 1 projects, and they recognized that as the priority to keep the schools open. And I don't want to speak for anyone, but the Fieldhouse Athletic Center building needs attention. This is what the group felt was the most appropriate based on the planning. Hopefully the community supports it. If they don't, the board will have to decide, do they go back, do they not go back, what does it look like if they go back? So I think to your point, they clearly looked at the questions and organized them in a way to prioritize, to show the community that they are being financially responsible with the tax dollars.
Yes,
Alexis Rama, I'm on Cascade Road. Just a really quick question. So if this were to go through and it were to be approved, voted, voted on and approved, and we have this number in our head, and I know someone had brought up like tariffs. That's one example, or let's say there's some sort of major natural disaster and there's no more trees for wood. I don't know.
Yeah.
Things happen, right?
Things happen.
So what if it goes from 16 million cost to 30 million?
It can't. The law says you approve this amount, we have to work in there.
Can't go over that
It
16
cannot go over the money being borrowed.
What we borrow is what we spend.
So then you just cut out Mark Shapiro 37 Highway. So if it becomes.
Wait.
the mic.
Mark Shapiro 37 Highview Caldwell. So the question becomes is if it does jump up for whatever these reasons are, you have 15 point whatever billion to spend. Do you have a plan of what you would then start cutting out of this program? Or?
So the answer is that we have contingencies, we have market escalation, that's intended to give us a buffer, but if things really start to get out of control, we need to make some decisions. For example, maybe the floor finishes are a little bit less than what we might have wanted, because once the building is built, in 10 years you can replace the floors, you save a little money, right? So we would make conscious decisions. You can't rebuild the building or things like that. So look, we've been fortunate. In 35 years of doing this, we have a particularly good track record of delivering it. Sometimes, based on conditions that we don't control, we do have to make some difficult decisions. But our guidance is typically, listen, finishes on the floors, paints, these kinds of things. They're not going to put a dent in multi-million dollars if we have to do it, but these are decisions that if we had to, we could wait a little bit and redo those things later. And so these are tactical approaches that we use on every project because, I'll reiterate it, by law, we cannot spend more than the voters approve.
I have a question, a couple of questions. So my name is Joe Vasquez. I live on Orchard Square in Caldwell. My first question is, if the Department of Education is shut down prior to the approval of everything, what effect would that have on if the vote passes yes or no?
So the approvals have already been received. We needed the approvals before we went to vote, and so those were received. The preliminary eligible cost letters and the final eligible cost letters are in hand, and that's how we know how much aid they are supporting. So most of our approvals are in place. There is one additional approval for educational spaces post-referendum that we'll have to resubmit, and the answer is if the Department of Education shuts down, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe we get to do whatever the hell we want.
So there would be a pause, so you have to pause, basically, if something happens with the Department of Education?
I can tell you that there are 600 plus school districts, each with ongoing referendums or referendums that are being voted on March, September, November, and December. And I am confident that the political pressures from all of those communities are not going to stop a construction project that the voters in that community supported. I am reasonably confident. I can't guarantee it, of course, but I think if the Department of Education shuts down, there are far bigger issues that the district has to deal with than a construction project that already has partial approvals.
Assuming that the budget doesn't increase because of it.
When you say assuming the budget of the...
The 15...
Yeah, the budget, it can't increase because that's what the voters approved. So that's staying in place.
That's my next question. So in the midst of the project, if a COVID event type happens where construction costs triple again, you've already demolished the previous building, you're in progress on the building, then what happens?
Contractors, when they bid a project, they lock in their dollar amounts. There are some provisions in the code. In the case of COVID, projects that we had under construction, the materials were already bought by the contractor. So again, I don't know that any of us could have anticipated a COVID-like impact to our community and lives. So we would have to cross that bridge when we get to it, because I think we can't work out of fear that something is going to prevent us from doing these. In the case of COVID, our projects continued on. Contractors that bid the project bought their materials because it's in their best interest before material costs go up as well. So they buy it, they store it. So those are things that we'd have to work around. But again, I couldn't tell you if something similar like that happened again, what would we do?
All the bids are secured up front for the entire project? Because this is like a 2.5-year build?
Yeah, so we're going to tactically discuss with the board, the facilities team, how we're going to package these projects. The athletic center is going to be a bid. One contractor knocking down, building, things like that. These other projects, we might package all the vestibules to a contractor just to do vestibules. We might do the heating directly to a heating contractor rather than a general contractor to save some overhead and profit that a general contractor would tack on to a subcontractor. So tactically, we have not made final decisions on how to package these things. The other thing you should be aware of is that in the pre-qualification process that a contractor goes through, they are pre-qualified for a certain dollar amount. So if we have a mechanical contractor who is just starting out, he might be pre-qualified for $2 million. He cannot bid on a project that's more than $2 million. And to add a level of complexity, if he has $1 million of outstanding contracts that he's working on, he can't bid anything for more than $1 million because his total pre-qualification is $2 million. There are contractors out there that have unlimited bidding capacity, but what we want to do is we might get some really good local contractors who are smaller in size, and as a result, tactically, we're going to want to package certain projects to attract them because an unlimited general contractor is not going to bid a $2 million vestibule project, for example.
And does it work the same as town would be required to take the lowest bid on every...
100%. We opened concealed bids on a given date with the business administrator, and we have to award to the lowest responsible bidder.
would the 4% interest rate that you're attempting to secure, is there anything, in your opinion, that would cause it to increase significantly that would affect the project after it gets approved?
No, to the contrary, the 4% is a conservative placeholder. I can tell you that we have other districts doing bonds, and they're in the low to mid 3% right now. So the financial advisor, and Brian can confirm if I'm misspeaking here, but the financial advisor's analysis was, look, let's put a 4% placeholder on there because we know it's conservative. Let's give the community information on which we can rely, under promise, over deliver. So the expectation is once it passes, again, tactically, the board will get with bond counsel and get with the financial advisor. Do we go borrow all that money now, lock in the 3% for 20 years, and then earn interest on it while we're developing the projects? That is absolutely one of the tactics that is used to benefit from the lower interest rate, to have the money in place, and to be able to move a project forward.
Because I'm not concerned with the first question of the project. I understand that it's necessary for all the improvements to the schools, and it sounds like a much better investment. The field house is, I think, in the group of people that I surround myself with, are concerned. What are we needing to spend that much money on this item?
Yeah, I think it's a fair concern.
Seems like more like I understand upgrades are needed, but it seems more of a luxury than what is necessarily just the basic requirements.
Yeah, look, I think obviously different people would have different opinions. I think you typically have one opportunity to do something like this. And I can tell you based on my experience that having gone through this different proposals for 35 years, there is always a concern when you're presenting to the community to be as fiscally responsible as you can. What can we present that doesn't seem egregious? It seems reasonable to accomplish our goals. And without fail, when the referendum is successful, everyone starts approaching me, hey, can we add this? Hey, can we add that? Can we do more? Can we do this? Well, no, we can't. We locked into a number with a clearly defined scope. So there is oftentimes, not always, but there is oftentimes buyer's remorse where people say, you know what, in hindsight, that extra X dollars, while I'm not downplaying that X dollars is still, whether it's $1 or $25, isn't important to every person paying it, but you have one chance to do this. You as a community have to decide, are the spaces that are added? Because I think from all the meetings I've attended, no one would disagree that it needs to be completely upgraded, and the women athletes deserve space. I don't think anyone that I've encountered so far would disagree with that. So really what we're debating is a multi-purpose room on the second floor. So that's for you to decide, not for me, but recognizing that this comes along once in a 20, 30, 40, 80-year window.
Joe, I also would like to say that I don't know if you grew up here or not. I did not, but I have, my first encounter with the field house was about a year and a half ago that I actually stepped foot in there. It was so disgusting. I mean, I can't even, it is vile. I'm going to be honest with you. And Teresa, I mean, she's not exaggerating. Like, kids get sick in there every day. It is really disgusting. I would just encourage anybody. I hope people are watching at home. Mr. Devlin is here. He is the high school principal. Mr. Romano is our athletic director. If you are not convinced before March 11th, please contact them. They will be happy to open it up and let you go through it. And I know it's like, but it is, when I tell you, I would just encourage you to see it. That's all. I'm not trying to, I would just encourage you to see it.
I'm not saying it's not necessary.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. Yeah, no.
I have two girls, so
Yeah.
I expect to be athletes in high school who use this.
Yep.
It's just footing the bill every time this is needed, this is needed, this is needed. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the goal in all of the meetings, I want to just very quickly thank all of the coaches that are here sitting in the front row, boys and girls coaches alike, for supporting it. They all had a hand in what this looked like, and I feel like the board really sat in those meetings with them, with Mr. Devlin, with Mr. Romano, with Greg, to make sure that it was a one-time hit. That's why when people are like, what's plan B, there's no plan B. This is the plan. This is the plan that the board believes in because we feel it's very, very necessary, not just for the longevity of our sports programs, but for the high school itself. Because that multi-purpose room, like Mr. Devlin says all the time, I need that. I need that for SAT testing. I need that for ACT testing. I need that for professional development. It's all a useful thing. And again, anybody who has not seen it, please. We've been opening it, but I'm telling you, anytime you can get private tours, not like Disney World, let me tell you, but please take a tour of it. I think you will agree that it really is in need of attention. Okay, sorry, Greg, didn't mean to step on you.
Matt Meckes, 39 Forest Ave. I'm a coach, but 5th and 6th grade. I'm a father. I've got 2 kids, daughters, right? And they become age when that facility would probably be brand shiny new and they'd be getting in there, right? So I'm all about the fact that they need a facility. That facility is a walking hazard. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I agree, 100%, right? So this question is sort of two-part. You said there's no plan B. Isn't it a bit short-sighted of the board to present a $15.5 million bill to the town without having a backup? So, devil's advocate, this thing fails, right? Question one, I don't think it's going to fail. I think everybody agrees that our schools are crumbling, we need to fix them. That's like a guarantee. I don't think there's anybody in town that's not going to vote yes on one. And if they do, that'll help, right? But number two, it's a big number, right? And it's a very specific use case. So is there an iteration in your designs over the course of the months you've been doing this that checks most of the boxes, that comes in under the 15.5, it's a more reasonable number. So if it does fail, you don't have to go back to the drawing board to stage 0. That you can redo something that was already done partially, pull it out of the dumpster, right? Polish it and say this one meets most of it, so you can maybe meet that September deadline that you have to resubmit.
So the answer to your question is that we have multiple evolutions of this design when we were planning it. 1-story options, 2-story options, all of those were explored. At the end of the day, if it's an unsuccessful referendum on question 2, then we would have to meet with the board and they would need to decide. They would need to decide, has the community spoken and their interpretation is they don't want any of this? Or has the community spoken, sounds like they want a 1-story, let's go back to the drawing board. So we can certainly not have to go back to 0, but a September referendum needs an application submission 6 months in advance, which is March. I can tell you with 100% certainty that while we worked over the holiday break in December to ensure that the board got their preliminary eligible cost letters and we were negotiating with the Department of Education on break, there's not a chance that there's enough time for us to be able to get an application ready for September. November, maybe, if everyone hitting on the cylinders to say, this is the other plan we want, but November or December would probably be the earliest to meet the deadline requirements. And I'll just share this. The Department of Education is understaffed, and everyone is watching what is happening with our federal employees already. So they were already understaffed where for 600 districts, they at one point a few decades ago maybe had 15 or 20 reviewers. I think they're down to 5, maybe less. So everything is taking longer to review. Even if you meet the deadlines, we were in on time, and technically if we meet their deadline, they are obligated to get us the approvals, but it was not an easy task. So yes, we have designs that we've explored. Yes, we could revisit them. We're definitely not getting to September. If we need to revisit this, maybe November, maybe December at the earliest.
And just personal follow-up, I think my biggest challenge is, the number's the number, right? I mean, I've worked on projects that are multi-million-dollar and they grow and the scope creep and built for that in, so it's all there. I feel strong-armed into the decision. Basically, we're here where our kids continue to use a mold-infested, crumbling, dilapidated mess, or we're forced to pay $15.5, right? Like, there's no middle.
Well,
so if I said you need a new car, and I go, the car's gonna cost $1,000, you gotta go to work, and you go, all right, I have no choice, I gotta buy the car, right? I feel like we're in the spot where we gotta pay $15.5 million and just deal with it.
Well,
and I don't think there's a visceral response to this. This is very personal, but I think forcing people to spend money without really feeling like they have a choice to spend it irritates me.
well, look, this is probably outside my purview to answer, but I've never shied away from a question. So the Board of Education was voted by the community to represent your interests. Having worked with them, they genuinely believe what they are presenting is in the best interest of the community. And you absolutely have a voice, because you can vote yes or no, and then they will revisit it. If the majority vote yes, then their decision was the right one. If the majority vote no, then their decision was the wrong one, and then they will have to go back to the drawing board to figure that out. But to say that you feel strong-armed and that this is your only choice, I don't know that that's fair, because these people were elected to represent you, and I guarantee you, not every decision they make, from educational to athletics, meets all of the community's criteria. But in fairness to them, they've been doing what I believe to be a pretty good job. They'd be receptive to professional feedback, to providing guidance, to getting this thing going in the right direction. So you're entitled to your opinion, and I understand that sometimes when you're talking about money, it can be a very contentious conversation, but I think that they tried to do their best as elected officials to present what they heard as the best option. And then we take it from there based on the 11th vote.
Alyssa Manelli, 39 Forest Avenue. I think, and I might speak for some here or not, part of the problem is the lens. We have 2 daughters, and all I keep hearing about is how you're going to use the second floor for wrestling, and you're going to use it for PD, and you're going to use it for staff development. We want to hear how you're going to use it for both genders, for both sports. So what can be done on that second floor where I can actually see my daughters using that space? Because we're all paying for it. And like you said, it's falling apart, we don't have a choice. So why are we not hearing about a balance? Because you showed, and things have changed, it looks better now, like the girls and the boys' lockers are equal, everything looks good on the first floor, but the second floor is not balanced. And I think that that's leaving some of us who have women, young girls, feeling like we're off-put by that. It's about how you're framing it. Again, you said wrestling. What else could we do on that second floor for our female athletes?
Yeah, and while he comes up here, I just want to point out that the plan has not changed since we've been presenting. So,
okay,
nothing to be apologetic for. That's why we're here, right? Because there was a misunderstanding of the 2 locker rooms, and they were identical from day one. There was no editing between the time we submitted to the DOE, right?
Gotcha.
As for the upstairs, Dan will address that, but you have to remember that there's an auxiliary gym being freed up that's going to get air conditioning. He did allude to cheerleading. So there are, okay, maybe it's not that particular space.
How many girls cheerlead?
I couldn't tell you. Dan, time for you to come up here.
She's here.
You want to answer that? Sue, you want to answer that?
Hi, I'm Susan Bergman. I've been the cheer coach for almost 20 years. In the fall, we have 3 squads, freshman, JV, and varsity. We have about 40 to 50 in the fall season. In the winter season, we have 2 teams, generally between 30 and 40. I could elaborate further on what cheerleading does not have and has not had if you wish to hear that, but we have absolutely no space dedicated to us to practice in the winter time. We are actually given space at the elementary schools 2 times a week where we displace aftercare. And the aftercare students have to go into their art rooms for 2 hours, and that's only twice a week, and it's only for the month of December until our games start. Mr. Romano said that we practice out in the CPA because there's high ceilings. We need high ceilings for stunting. We have many cheer mats that are expensive that we cannot use because we have no place to use them. It's also too cumbersome to move them around with us, so they are stored here and at the middle school and not used very often. So if there is a second floor in the athletic center and wrestling does move up there, that would give us a space for winter cheering. It would help us to use our mats. It would be more safe, and it would also give us more continuity of not moving to Wilson on Tuesdays and Jefferson on Thursdays and practicing in the weight room in between all the weights and machines, hoping to God that nobody falls because there's no place. Before games, we're lucky if we can get into the back gym because rec uses it for the younger wrestling program. If you guys come to the games, you see our cheerleader stuff is thrown underneath the bleachers. There several $100 varsity jackets are thrown on the floor. If you come to the fall games, we have all of our stuff on the track. We tell the girls to pack garbage bags in their bags in the event it rains so that they can put their bags in garbage bags so that their stuff doesn't get wet. We've had to change in the maintenance garage. We've had to stand in the maintenance garage when it's pouring rain. If a girl has to go to the bathroom on a Friday night during a game, she could be gone for 15 plus minutes and hoping that someone's kind enough to let her cut the line because she's in a cheer uniform. So in terms of a second floor, I don't know if maybe depending on wrestling and cheering schedules, maybe we could both share it. We both require mats. Maybe all the mats could be stored up there. We both require rollers. That all of that stuff could be shared. But cheerleading, we cheer for 6 sports, 3 in the fall, 3 in the winter. And I mean, we're by far not overlooked because Mr. Romano and the board's very supportive, as is our administration, but there is absolutely no space for us, especially when it's cold and raining. So.
Just to expand on your question, though, we have to remember there's 3 seasons. So we have the fall, the winter, and the spring. Certainly in the fall and the spring, our ladies teams will be able to use that upper space for film review. As I mentioned before, they don't have the space now. You know, we actually budget a photographer to take film of all of our home sports. So they would now have an area, space, to review these films, and that would be in the fall as well as the spring. In the winter is when wrestling would be there and when cheering would be there. And also remember that there are different times of the day, so they can split times. You know, certainly there's Saturdays, you know, so they both can use the space, but I would personally see primarily our cheerleaders being in that auxiliary gym.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I watched enough of these on YouTube, right? Hi, everybody. Kelly Fernicola, 264 Runnymede Road. I was a 2009 graduate from here. I was a 12 varsity letter winner, and now I have the honor and the privilege of being the head girls soccer coach for the team that I played for 19 years ago, which is why I have to say out loud right now. And for the past 4 weeks or so, I've been on this fact-finding mission to get accurate, complete information and dozens of conversations with our public and conversations with our administration in the unique position that I'm in. And I want to speak, like Dan did, as a taxpayer, first and foremost, second as a lifelong resident, and third as a coach and advocate of a female athlete who happens to have an 18-month-old daughter at home, who I've right now had to change on the track and in the bleachers because there's no place for me to change her. So I actually want clarification from the board, because I'm boiling this down to, like, what question do I tell people they're answering? Tell me if this is accurate, right? And I forget, a gentleman over there, he did a really good job of explaining, like, yeah, this is what it's gonna cost. We kinda know this. You have daughters, I wanna thank you for being a coach of them. I'd say it all the time, our youth coaches have a bag of flat balls and an hour in the gym, and I get them for 5 days a week for as long as I want, and you guys have the hardest job. So the question that I want clarification from, just tell me if this is accurate. Okay, I live in West Caldwell. So, is $127.43 a year for the next 20 years a price that I'm willing to pay for equality in my community? Is that the accurate statement?
Yeah,
Okay.
at a certain assessed value, yes.
At that assessed value. Right, so a little bit more, a little bit less depending on that, right? The camera's over there, right? Okay, I'm gonna use the rest of my 30 seconds, whatever I have. Is $127 a year and 43 cents, more or less, right there, for the next 20 years, a price that I am willing to pay for equality in my community? And I will go home on March 11th, and I will look at my mom, and I will look at myself in the mirror, and I will look at my players, and I will look at my daughter and my nieces, and I will look at my dad and my husband and my brothers and my nephews, and I will go to bed knowing how I answered that question. And I think how we answer this question as a community speaks to the type of community that we want to be. Thank you.
I have a couple technical questions. The square footage don't add up. So you saved 24,000 or 2,430 square feet, but when you do your table
I'm so
on your-
sorry, can I just interrupt you for one
Sure.
moment? Can you just give me your name, first and last, and your address, please?
Jim Weingartner, 5 Whitfield Street. But in your detailed takeoffs, they don't add up to 2,400 square feet. So what's the discrepancy?
So I'm not sure what document you're looking at or where the discrepancy is.
Document you gave us. Well, no, so even if you start breaking down, like the details don't work in this document.
So I'd have to look at the document. What I can tell you is that the building itself is 16,000 square feet. We identified the locker rooms as 2,400 each. Are they 2,500 maybe? I don't know, I can check the math.
No, this is 1,500 on your document,
For the locker rooms?
for locker rooms.
There are 2 locker rooms.
No, each. So if you do the takeoffs on your individual spaces, so your large locker room is 925, your coach's room is 280.
So did you figure in the restrooms for each of the facilities?
Yeah, it comes up to 1,500.
Not the public.
No, yeah.
I have to go check the math. What I can tell you is if the math is wrong, it's wrong, but either way, the spaces are equal on both sides.
No, I know, but your details are wrong, so in terms of what your square footages are, the question.
So there's no label on the circulation space, which is inside, there are 2 vestibules.
Yeah.
That square footage is not necessarily accounted for. So I have to do the math and see some of
Okay. Yep. And then the other question, what is clear height on the second floor? You talked about possibly using that for basketball.
No.
No.
No, not at all.
Somebody said something about that.
It's a multi-purpose room, and I want to say it's 18 feet. It's
Clear height?
It's clear height 18 feet. So it's intended to be a multi-purpose room to give a little more than you might have here, which might be 12 feet. But it is not tall enough, nor is the footprint big enough to have a regulation basketball court. That is something we talked about as part of the planning process. It was felt that a multi-purpose room was sufficient, and we didn't want to make the square footage even bigger because in addition to the regulation basketball court, you have to have a safe zone around the perimeter, so there's more that goes into it.
Okay. And then on the interest rate, it's published at 4%. Is that correct for today's interest rates?
So I answered that question earlier. The 4% is a placeholder by the financial advisor.
Right.
Interest rates are in the low to mid 3s right now for those that are bonding. So on March 11th, the district will go out and publicly bid the bond, just like they do a project. They will have banks submit offers, and what we are seeing today, and that's why the financial advisor selected a conservative number, because under promise over deliver, we expect the interest rates to be in the 3s.
And a lot of people talk about how the current facility looks, and what is the operating budget going to be to keep that facility in its tip-top shape, and how has that been calculated?
Yeah, so I don't have an answer for that. I think the board has obviously,
It's 16,000 square feet that you're going to be heating, cooling, cleaning.
all true, all
So
true.
what is an operating
Yeah.
budget, and where is that going to come out of? Where are you going to take that away from your overall operating budget?
So we don't have a final numbers right now for the budget. We do know that it's going to have cleaning, heating, and other facility or I say utility requirements, and that is going to have to come out of our operating budget. So I don't have the numbers for what those are at this point.
So you don't anticipate increasing the operating budget, you're going to take it away from something else?
It's going to be part of our existing budget, correct?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some offsets. So, for example, you have an aging building that they're putting money at to repair, to open up a door, to fix a toilet that's not working. There's going to be some savings realized that they don't have to spend on maintaining an old building. But to your point, that's going to have to be budgeted and looked at.
Any other questions? Absolutely. Just let us get you the microphone, okay? That's okay, it doesn't have to be quick. No, it's okay, it's okay.
Just wondering, so I have a question about money. I also agree that that is not a stellar facility. And I do think something needs to be done up there. But that's for all of you guys to decide. I just have a question. So we're putting like a roughly 2 million towards this, right?
2 million,
2
yes.
million.
That we have in our budget currently.
Capital reserve, yes.
Okay.
Not our budget.
So, again, hypothetically, this does not go through. Is that money gonna be reallocated somewhere else in the school, or is it gonna be saved to the side for this at a later date?
So I'll let Brian explain what capital reserve means. Go ahead, Brian.
So capital reserve, I call it one of our buckets. So we have an operating budget that we'll present later this year for the new budget. And when there is excess surplus from a expiring budget, we have the option of putting some in a subsequent budget, or we can put it in what's called restricted reserves. And so we have 3 restricted accounts: capital reserve, maintenance reserve, and emergency reserve. Now the capital reserve account, as it sounds, can only be used for capital projects. So the board will decide, again, if it's not used here, where and how the capital improvement might be allocated. It could go to the facility if they go back round 2 and saying we're gonna try again. If that happened, didn't pass, or not. But it can only go to a capital project. It cannot be put into the operating budget.
Brian?
Sorry.
No, I was gonna ask
Can
him.
only go to new projects, like something that we're
So I
just
want-
starting, or can it?
No, I want Brian to, can you like clarify on what a capital project might be, like give examples?
So capital projects are, so many times there are things that are attached to the buildings. And so capital projects, if we were a private sector firm, we would basically capitalize
Think about it like this, a home
Okay.
improvement.
So
If you're gonna put in a new mechanical system in your home, that's a capital project.
Yes.
If you're going to pay the utility bill, that's not, because it's recurring. So Dr. Kunkel was talking about a tennis
Everyone's talking.
court that was repaired.
So things that are typically tied, that you can long-term, they're gonna be private sector, we depreciate them. So they're long-lasting assets that have long-lasting value attached to the facilities.
Let me answer it differently for you.
Yes.
The $2 million in capital
Thank you, Dr.
reserve,
Conklin. The tennis courts are a capital project. Yep, yep. We want like real
the
life
$2 million
examples, like
that is being
roofs.
allocated to the athletic center, if the athletic center fails, it goes back into the bucket for use on a future project. If question 1 fails, I can almost guarantee you that that $2 million that was allocated there will go towards some of these other needed projects.
Correct.
If question 1 does not pass, because the piping needs to be replaced, the building facade has to be repaired. All these things that are permanent fixtures in a building that are essentially one-time expenses as opposed to ongoing expenses like salaries and utilities and stuff like that, that's what the capital money can be used for. So if question 1 passes and question 2 does not, that $2 million goes back in the bucket and will be decided on what to use it for, a different project moving forward.
Okay, so mainly like fixtures,
Correct.
projects.
Right.
Things
We
that
can't
are
use,
bolted
right,
down here.
we can't use capital reserve for textbooks, right? We can
Or
only
for
use it.
like a
Salaries.
new mental health program.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You could have just asked that in the beginning, we could have got you much more straight. No, that's a good example, though. It's a great example.
Hi again.
Hi.
Gabriel 54 Berkeley. Sorry, Mom, this time. More comment than question. Greg, I've appreciated this. You've been great. You've been great to exchange with. You made a point before about the board being elected officials. I guess to add clarity to that, I think this past election there were 2 open seats and only 2 people ran. Just again, like just context to your point, like they're elected up the township. But by all means, like I appreciate the heck out of everyone putting their time for it. I'm not, so like it's not like I can put myself on a pedestal and be like, oh, what are you doing? Like you chose to put your time for it, and I'm always going to be grateful of someone who chooses to get involved civically. But I guess part of what I also would have hoped for in this, again, not against you,
I got it.
to ask questions of, from the elected officials in terms of this open question forum. You've answered a lot of the questions, but I guess it'd be easier to also digest if the peers amongst us and the people who are in the town with us could field some of the concerns or engage in some of the dialogue with the people who are here.
Yeah, and look, I think that I'm here to respond to more of the technical related questions. Brian, the financials. Certainly the board has shown nothing but a commitment to allowing interactions and communications and receiving emails and responding to them. So look, at the end of the day, I can't speak to why people run for a Board of Education or why they don't. They're still the elected officials. And if there are questions that you would like them to answer, they're not shying away. I just seem to be a little more proactive in helping them move this along. So I'm sure they would answer any questions that you have. My intent was not to dominate the Q&A. It was to try to help clarify what has been coming to light as misinformation or a lack of clarity on certain topics. You're welcome.
Hi, how are you? Journey Cifelli, 64 McKinley Ave. I am the one with a type 1 diabetic daughter. She is currently in the 6th grade and plays field hockey, lacrosse, and basketball, and she is a rock star. I'm a little biased. But just for an example, when we were playing against Glen Ridge last year, she wears medical devices on her arms on either side, and it became a point of checking for the lacrosse sticks, and both devices got ripped off in the course of her lacrosse game, and we had to go to my car to put them on. Now, that is obviously a youth problem, but when we get to high school, she is an independent woman and is going to be caring for her own health and isn't going to want to have to go to her mom's car. And the current standing, which we have, is a stall bathroom, and it is not sanitary for her medical needs. So having a training facility where she could go and see a trainer to make sure that the sites are protected and clean is phenomenal. So I understand that this is just one little girl, but she's a very important little girl. And there's going to be lots and lots more little girls that come along with similar circumstances that need other private areas to change or whatever the case may be. And I think that it is our duty as a community to provide this for them, and it has gone 82 years without them having it. And I understand that it is a fiscal challenge for some, and I understand that it's going to be $10, $12 extra a month. I get it. And Anna is fully willing to cut out Starbucks runs once a month to go and have a place for her to be able to take care of her needs. And I think that if we think about it as a monthly fee of $10, $11 for an average price home, maybe at $20 for the biggest home in town, maybe $30, I'm making these numbers up obviously. But if you think about it in terms of a monthly number as opposed to a $15 million number, it's a lot easier to understand. And taking off a floor and paying $3 less a month, I mean, it's like when you go and you get the sunroof for an extra $6. Everybody wants the sunroof. So just think about it in like things that make actual sense. And I think if you think about it just being a few extra bucks, let's get the sunroof.
First of all, your daughter is an absolute rock star. She's one of my favorite kids to coach. The girl's unbelievable. Are there any projections for the care and feeding, the CapEx stuff, the OpEx stuff that's going to go on for this building, right? Because right now you've got one light bulb in that building and it costs 89 cents a day to run. What's a 16,000 square foot building going to cost to run over the course of the next 10 or 15 years, right? I'm assuming your design is going to include low flow toilets and HE, receptacles and LED, right? Everything you can do to lower the cost and the operational expenses here. Have any projections been done on what it's actually going to cost to run this facility? And how does that impact your budget as you do budget projections year after year?
So we have not done any operational budgeting as it relates to running the building because there are going to be a lot of factors that play into that, right? When a building is cold or hot, systems have to run more frequently. If lights stay on or off, those are all things that impact it. So we have not done any. I don't know if Brian to date has done any or not. So that is certainly something that will need to be done and is certainly going to be part of the overall long-term financial picture, just like any of the existing spaces that need to be maintained and. Yeah, 100%, 100%, yep, 100%. Okay?
Anyone else?
Okay?
Great. Greg, I just want to, again, on behalf of the board, thank you for giving of your time always. You're amazing. And again, to the coaches, Mr. Devlin, Mr. Romano, thank you all for being here and for speaking and answering questions and just showing your support. And thank you to all of you who have come out tonight to ask the questions. They're important. I think especially Alyssa mentioned a question and got a lot more clarity for the community that those looking at home could hear, and it was important. So thank you to everyone. I'll just reiterate that the vote by mail ballots should, if you vote by mail, they're already in your mailboxes. They can be voted at any time. March 11th, the polls will be open from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, at your regular polling locations for both Caldwell and West Caldwell. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to just take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to continue to vote, and then anything off the agenda, well, I'm actually going to open public comment on and off the agenda as well outside of the referendum, but we're going to just take a 2-minute break. Oh, great. Okay, welcome back. We're now going to move to approval of the minutes. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
And Brian, whenever you're ready, we'll take the roll.
Ms. DiMartini?
Yes.
Ms. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Diambola?
Yes.
Ms. Grosso?
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
Great, so we're going to now move to public comment on agenda items only. I'm going to remind everyone that public participation shall be governed by the following. Participant must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface comments by an announcement of their name and address. Statements are to be limited to 3 minutes duration. Participant may speak no more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. Boards use the public comment period of the meeting as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer or cross-examination between the public and individual members. Be aware that not all issues brought before the board this evening will be resolved. Boards may respond to public comment by seeking additional information or by delegating the authority to investigate an issue to the superintendent or their designee. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, and/or terminate a participant's comments if they exceed the allotted time or are objectively obscene. Participants may be civilly liable for any obscene, defamatory, or slanderous statements made during public comment. So right now we'll take comments or questions on agenda items only, and then I'll open up at the end for anything else. Anyone want to get up about anything on the agenda right now? No, you should have, Brian.
There's copies up front.
That's okay. And Alyssa, don't feel rushed. If something comes up, you can always ask at the end anything on the agenda. So we'll just, if anyone doesn't have anything right now, I'm going to move on, but it can be on or off the agenda at the end as well. Okay? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to voting. So we're going to start with curriculum, please.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motions to approve items A through B. And under C, motion to approve items 1, 4, 5, and items D and G on this evening's agenda.
Okay, do I have any discussion amongst board members? No? Okay, can we move for a second?
I'll second.
And Brian, whenever you're ready, we'll take the roll.
Ms. DiMartini?
Yes.
Ms. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Diambola?
Yes.
Ms. Grosso?
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
Okay, moving on to personnel.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motion to approve items A through L under certificated staff and items A through D under non-certificated staff in personnel on this evening's agenda.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Brian, whenever you're ready,
We have a
please.
second?
Second.
Can I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Sorry.
Okay, Carrie.
And whenever you're ready.
Okay. Ms. DiMartini?
Yes.
Ms. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Diambola?
Yes.
Ms. Grosso?
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
Okay, moving on to finance and facilities.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motions to approve items A through E under finance and item A under facilities.
Great, any discussion? And can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
And then Brian, whenever you're ready.
Ms. DiMartini?
Yes.
Ms. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Diambola?
Yes.
Ms. Grosso?
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
We have nothing under policy this evening, so we're going to skip that and now move back into public comment on any items on or off the agenda. Again, participant must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface comments by an announcement of their name and address. Statements are to be limited to 3 minutes duration. Participant may speak no more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. Boards use the public comment period of the meeting as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session or cross-examination between the public and individual members. Please be aware that not all issues brought before the board will be resolved this evening. Boards may respond to public comment by seeking additional information or by delegating the authority to investigate the issue to the superintendent or his designee. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, and/or terminate a participant's comments if they exceed the allotted time or are objectively obscene. Participants may be civilly liable for any obscene, defamatory, or slanderous statements made during the public comment section. Would anyone like to get up on anything on or off the agenda? Madeline.
Breckenmead Road. I have a question that's just kind of a random question. Every week we're at the meetings, you ask if we have comments on agenda items, but the agendas are never really fully detailed agendas until after the fact. I understand certain things are privacy issues, like when it comes to medical leaves or things like that, but other things aren't, resignations, amended appointments, they never have names. So, appointments, things like that. Why is that? Because now you ask us if we have comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna let
We have nothing to say, and then you vote, and then it's a done deal.
The IDs are left there until the board votes yes, and then it becomes public. It's not public until the board votes.
Right. So that doesn't have to be, though. I know other districts don't do it that way. Other districts have names on there when there are teachers hired or positions abolished or transfers
So
made.
depending on what it is, we do put the names on there, but in most cases, we don't put the names on there. And we usually have a caucus meeting, and then it becomes public after the caucus meeting. This meeting is unique because we only have one meeting this month, so it's a voting meeting.
There's never meetings on here. When you have,
So
amended appointments, appointments of new staff,
If you
appointments
click on
extracurricular.
the links are there,
Yeah,
and they should be
I
there.
look. Yes. I definitely, I look at this before it comes out, and the names are not there. Not until
Again,
after the fact.
They're added in between once the thing, this time they weren't added because it's one meeting this month. They're added in between. So if you check the updated agenda,
So
they'll be on
the
there.
names are there before you vote, is what you're
No,
saying?
So the names aren't there until the board takes that, because we have a caucus meeting and then an action meeting. So in between, when the board agrees this is the final agenda, that link then becomes live with information on it.
Between the first meeting and the second meeting?
Because
in the
we
month.
have our private session, that's when that is discussed, and then they go on the agenda after that, from the caucus to the voting meeting.
Okay.
When we have 2 meetings a month. This meeting was unique, we only had 1, so they'll go on
Oh, no, because
after.
I look, and so unless I miss it every single month, I have not
You
seen
should
that.
check in between, they should be there, and some of them might not be there because there's different links. But if it's not being uploaded, let me know, and I'll double check. But
Okay.
it's supposed to be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi again. Wow, I'm chatty tonight. Alyssa Manelli, 39 Forest. Actually, to this lovely woman's point, I've been looking and scouring through the minutes to find out where we are in the superintendent search. Talk about an awkward comment. And I can't seem to find anything. You guys gathered us all in November and said you were going to have transparency about what was going on. I've heard nothing except finally I heard back that you guys are collecting resumes. We as parents and educators in the community wanted to have a voice in this process, and we feel like, I speak for many, I know when I say this, we've lost our voice because there was nothing that I had heard, nothing I had seen. So where we had requested, is there a place we can look? Can you put this information somewhere specific? How will you be conducting these interviews? What type of, we're not using any kind of agency, so how did you recruit these individuals? Was this on Indeed? Like, where are these people coming from? And we're looking for transparency, so I'm wondering how we can find that transparency.
Sure, so there should be on the district website, Brian, there should be a superintendent tab, correct? There should be.
A superintendent
There
search tab?
Yeah. You don't have it up there?
I'd have to check.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right, so thank you for bringing that up. My apologies. Be totally honest. So where we are in the superintendent search, we advertised on, Brian, can you please clarify the sites? NJ School Jobs, how many sites? K-12?
New Jersey School Boards Association, New Jersey ASBO, K-12 Job Spot, and the other one is NJ schooljobs.com.
Okay, so that advertisement went up in the beginning of December. It was left open until almost the end of January. Resumes came in. The board met, went through all of the resumes on 2 separate occasions. I think the deadline was January 31st. So we left it open for over a month because of the holidays. We decided we were going to have a round 1 screening. We conducted the first set of interviews last Monday. We saw 7 people. Tomorrow evening, we will be seeing the remainder 4 candidates. So we had a total of 11 people in the first round to be screened. We will update the public after tomorrow evening. We will make sure that we put a tab on the website. I'm apologizing for that. I had no idea. I thought we had directed something to be on the website. We will make sure something goes on the website. We have been, I'm just gonna be totally, very transparent at meetings. In fact, at the last meeting, I actually told publicly that we are very prepared. We are not rushing. We are very prepared to bring an interim in if we do not feel that a candidate comes to the surface that's to the expectations of what we as a board feel the district needs. And we want to finish tomorrow and make a determination. Are we going to go to a round 2 or are we going to advertise for an interim?
Okay, I think part of the issue is I couldn't be at that last meeting. And so I looked on the minutes and I couldn't find anything that you're saying. There's no information anywhere about what you said.
Yeah, that's a
and
problem.
communication is a major problem here. So that's number 1. Number 2, how do we know the questions that are being asked? We have not. You came to us wanting our involvement. I want to be involved in this process. The man or woman or person, I should say, who leads this building, or all of our buildings, is of the utmost importance. It does come from the top down, absolutely. And I know you are elected officials, and I thank you because I know that this is a tireless position. You work so hard. But we need to have some understanding as to what questions you're asking. Are you looking at just resumes? Because I know when I apply to a teaching position, or I have in the past, my goodness, you have to give everything, almost your firstborn, in some of those systems. So did you guys just collect resumes?
No, they applied through the
AppleTrack, okay.
They applied through AppleTrack, which you know, applying for jobs in the education system.
That's difficult.
They have to put in a lot of things. They had to write essays. You know, it's like a typical AppleTrack.
But is there any way for us as citizens of this community to see the process that you're using for that transparency? I understand if we can't know the names, but I work in a neighboring district. There's lots of best practices that are used to hire superintendents. We just want to know what you guys are doing in that, like what methodology.
Yeah, so
you know?
I'm going to tell you that right here on the school board, you have 2 educators. So I highly trust that they guided the process. Mr. Diambolo was in charge of it. And Ms. Mack, they guided the process as far as coming up with questions. We worked on that together as a board.
But what is the point to keeping us out of it?
You're not out of it, Alyssa. I just have to, let me just clarify something. We're screening, okay? We're not choosing a superintendent tomorrow night, okay? This is a process. That's what it's called, a process. So this is round 1, we're screening. If we move to round 2, we will bring in other people, and then definitely on round 3, we will have a panel of people.
Thank you.
Staff, teachers, administrators. We're not making this decision in a bubble. So if that is not going to happen.
Again, Julianne, communication, if that's the process, because that was the questions we were asking when we all met. How are you doing this? There has been, this is the first time I've heard, there will be 3 rounds. By the time we get to round 2, we're going to be bringing in additional people.
Yes.
But that's not been communicated to us. And part of the problem that we are struggling with in this district is communication. We just got an email about the new assembly that's going on in the middle school, which is another question that I had. There was no way to opt out on that
Wait,
email.
can I just stop you for a moment? So I just want to make sure that I've answered your
You
questions
have,
about the
because now I
superintendent.
understand
Okay.
that you have a process that you have explained to us. And if you could have put that up on the superintendent, just put it up there. Let us know what you're doing. And that's it. And I go, okay, we're good.
I'm going to tell you, it's a very well-made point. It will happen. I will be honest with you. It was my assumption that it had happened. We had discussed that, and it didn't happen, but it will now happen.
Because then you won't get crazy me. Good. Excellent. Okay. Number 2.
Now the assembly, I'm going to direct that to Dr. Conklin.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The assembly. I was just looking for a little more information on it. First of all, who chose the name? Was that the FBI?
That's from the FBI, and if there's specific questions about the assembly, I would ask that you contact the administration at the middle school. They could better answer all those questions. I could only tell you that this person does these assemblies all over. They've done assemblies in the past, and that's the name that they selected. It's
Just
the
thinking of
reality
middle
of
schoolers, what they're going to take back
again,
in their side conversations.
it's the
I'm like,
reality
oof.
of what's happening, and it's not something that we would have necessarily chosen, but we don't want to sugarcoat it either, because those are the kids, that's the age that's targeted most, which is why we have this person coming in to talk to that population.
Okay, and then maybe you can answer this, though. If the parent wanted to opt out and educate their child themselves, is there board policy on how that's done?
This is not something that would be board policy to opt out of. Again, I would talk to the administration. I'm sure, and I know 100% that they've made arrangements for parents who may not be comfortable having their child sit through this presentation. So I would reach out to them, but it's not board policy. There's only 2 reasons people could opt out of things, and this is not one of those things. However, understanding that some parents may be uncomfortable, the administration at the middle school has made arrangements. You'd have to contact them what your choice is.
Okay,
All right?
and I will do that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Teresa Cardy, 23 Cleveland Street. I put together a letter this time so I don't curse. So I'm going to read from it, okay? I stand before you tonight to express my deep concerns regarding the rollout of the DEI and other groups that you've brought in, and now knowing the name of this group really pushes me the wrong way. Very excited to get a new superintendent in here.
Me too.
Me too. Don't worry.
All right,
Recently,
wait,
President.
just give me one moment, okay? I have to say, all right? I never mind anyone coming up to the microphone. You know that. I never mind it. I welcome people to come up and express themselves. That being said, I cannot have you be disrespectful to the superintendent.
That's freedom of speech.
No, listen
I
to
didn't
me.
mean disrespect, it's just
can't-
the truth.
I read a statement about being respectful on purpose.
Okay.
And it is in that statement that I can terminate the comments if I feel like they're inappropriate,
Okay.
okay? I am going
I'm
to
just
let
gonna
you
strictly
continue,
read.
but please
That's all.
read. Thank you.
I'm just going to read. Recently, our president, Donald Trump, issued a directive calling for the ending, cancellation of any education institutions citing concerns over discriminatory practices and the undermining of the true equality. As citizens and as a district, it is imperative that we align our policies with federal directives to avoid consequences that could negatively impact our schools. The financial risk and loss is funding. Our major risk that must be addressed is the potential loss of federal funding if we fail to comply. Federal grants and education fundings are directly tied to adherence to national policies. If this district chooses to defy the president's order and continues to implement DEI initiatives, we could face funding cuts, resources that are critical for our students, teachers, educational programs. Are we willing to sacrifice essential funding just to push a political motivated agenda? Additionally, teachers and administrators who willfully defy this directive must be held accountable. Schools and school staff are public servants entrusted with carrying out lawful policies, not advancing personal political agendas. The consequences of noncompliance may include disciplinary actions. What's going to be done if they're not following through? Loss of teaching certification, education who disregard federal mandates, potential legal consequences. Do we bring in attorneys, school districts, or individuals who continue implementing and pushing this forth? Liability for misuse of funds, right? That's another big one. We had in 2017, 2018, my son in middle school had counselors that were brought in from outside to help with mental health. He was in the 504 plan, he was in the IE plan, he was able to leave the classroom and go get counseling if he was struggling. And I had the counselor crying to me that there was no more funding for this outside team. And that really affected my son greatly. Like, he had nobody to go to. It's not available. And I think this is what we need more of in schools, right? And I think that's more important than spending all that money, although it needs to be done, but we gotta have some money for this too. Like, this has to be put into place, or we're just really hurting our children. It's crucial that our schools personnel understand that this is not optional. Educators and administrators must follow the law, just as students are expected to, and just as I am expected to respect others, and I do apologize.
DEI and its harmful effects is being brought out by Rutgers. They're doing studies on it. I've printed everything out. Beyond the financial and legal risk, DEI programs have increasingly led to division rather than unity. These programs often categorize students based on race, gender, sexual identity, instead of treating them as individuals. This contradicts the very principle of what we're trying to do when you're saying we're rolling out equality. We should be upholding. Additionally,
Teresa, I'm going to give you just one more minute
one
to
more
finish
minute
it.
and I'm done.
Please, thank you.
While all students should feel safe in a classroom, you know, they're not. Have we looked at our scores for our school ratings? They're really, really, really low. Really low right now. We're at a 5 out of 10. So we need to prioritize some other things that are a little important here. You know, I just had a teacher, and I won't say, it's not a teacher, it's a nurse at a school, put on the internet, "Dear trans kids, this world is better with you in it, and you are worth fighting for." Although I believe that, I just don't think it should be from the school and the school personnel. Like I say all the time to make my point across, I'm not racist against any of this. I have a transgender cousin who's 60 years old. The way they're doing it to indoctrinate children today is really getting under my skin, and I just don't know what to do about it. Like, I don't know how this is going to stop. Our president has tried to stop it. Are we going to put this in place? What are we doing? And I would like some clarity on it, because I don't know whether to take my child out of the school systems here and move, or take them out of the school systems and go to private schools. I don't know what to do. I'm confused, and I need help from you guys that give your time to us. So thank you for that, because it's
Thank
given.
you.
I know it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to say that just the way when we had the whole discussion about the health curriculum and the board said that we will follow the letter of the law, whatever it may be, and tailor it to the needs of our community, that's going to be, we are going to follow the law. So when the laws come down from the Department of Education, whatever they may be, that's what our intention is going to be. And just the way with the health curriculum, we tailored it to work for our children, that's what we're going to do here as well. This is our community. We serve it. We believe in it. We're going to do what's best for our kids. But I will say unequivocally that this district will always be a place that protects children, where children feel safe to learn, okay? Children of all races, creeds, colors, religions.
My daughter's not getting
Yeah.
My daughter's not getting it.
Okay, so,
She's in first
all right,
grade.
Teresa, but I'm gonna say, I can't talk to you when you're here because you're in the seat. I'm not gonna go back and forth. But I have to also say, like, I sense your frustration. I don't appreciate it. I feel terrible about it. But you also have to address it with the school administrators. Then Dr. Conklin has to step in. If you're trying to address it at the building level and you're not getting what you need, then it has to come to the central office level. The board does not administer the school district, so we can't. Madeline, you want to come back up?
Hi, Madeline Brown, 13 Burgundine. As a parent in the district, and there's not too many teachers here left, but I think everybody knows I tend to be fairly pro-teacher in this district. I also just want to make sure that the board does understand that teachers have private Facebook pages and private lives, and they have a right, and I hope the board defends that right, to post what they want on their private Facebook pages, and that is different than coming from the school.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else want to come up and we're not going to, listen, if anyone wants to disagree, I'm just going to ask that we just keep decorum. Does anyone else want to come up and speak at the microphone to the board this evening? Anything on or off the agenda? No? Okay. Then I'm going to close public comment and move to enter executive session at 9:15 p.m. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
I'll make a second.
Brian, can you take the roll, please?
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Abstentions? Motion carried.
Thank you. And I just do want to mention, the board meetings are going to be moved up. There will be 2 next month. We're moving them up to meet a deadline for our budget. So they're going to be St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, and then the following Monday, which I believe is March 24th. One will be at Washington School, one will be at Wilson School. That will be advertised on the website.